Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Markwayne, I'm going to use my time completely different than how I was going to when I walked into this hearing. I can't top what Senator Marino, the comments he made about how unconscionable it is that we're not funding and we're not providing paychecks to those 260,000 men and women that you will be soon leading. We, other than working with no labels, we don't serve on the same committees, have never gone on Codell together, and that's oftentimes how you get to know our colleagues. So I don't know you as well as some of the other people on the dais here. Certainly within conference, we've seen each other interact. We share a couple things in common. I think we're both pretty passionate about our love for this country, about trying to fix the enormous messes left behind by President Biden, Democrats. We wear emotions on our sleeves. But I will say that I've been here 15 years. I've been through a lot of confirmation hearings. I've listened to a lot of nominees. I've heard a lot of introductions. If one of your first decisions as a nominee was to pick the person to introduce you, you couldn't have done a better job. I mean, the introduction from Senator Langford was probably one of the most genuine and heartfelt I've ever heard. And I will say your opening statement was probably one of the more genuine and heartfelt testimonies I've ever heard, if not the most. I'm looking behind you at the people who have come here to support you, your former colleagues in the House, Chairman Smith, a former Speaker of the House, Senator Britt. But I see Josh Gottheimer there. He's not a Republican member of the House. He's a Democrat. I've seen you interact with him trying to get some permitting reform. Please, briefly, because I want you to tell another story here yet, but just talk a little bit about your relationship with Josh and other members of the House.
Josh and I, we may not always agree on every issue, but he's a friend. And our relationship started back in 2017 when he thought I was a staff member running a workout group, because I've been running a bipartisan workout group that started actually with Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Jason Smith 13 years ago. And I still do that to this day. When he came in 2017, Joe Kennedy, who is also a friend of mine, he approached me when I was on the House floor and asked me, why is a trainer in the gym on the House voting? And to which Joe Kennedy laughed and said, he's a member from Oklahoma. And after that, we became friends. In fact, our daughters are writing a book together about bipartisanship. But when Josh asked me to join a bipartisan group called No Labels, that's when we really started seeing that there's a lot of common ground that we can work together. Yeah, as I said in my opening statement, that we all make decisions based on how we're raised and our life experiences. And Josh and I was raised different, just like everybody on this dais is raised different than me, and we've had different life experiences. But we all believe in that flag right there behind you. And what I say is, as long as you love that flag as much as I do, and you're willing to die for that flag like I am, we can work together. We can set the differences aside, and we can work together. And Josh represents that too. Just for him being here, you guys know he's got a primary in New Jersey. He's not a senator, has 6 years. He's up every 2 years, and he's here. That's a friend that says, hey, my political differences are beside, I still like you. I cannot tell you how many members on the Democrat Party, which I love and respect, and I understand the politics, have came up to me since this nomination and say, hey, I love you, but I'm running for this office, but I'm running for this office, but I'm up for re-election. I'd be killed in my state. In most cases, I would support you, but. And it drives me crazy, but when you see a real friend like that, run through fire for the guy.
So again, this is a nomination hearing, and from my standpoint, when you're trying to select somebody to run an operation, you want somebody with integrity, somebody with that passion toward the mission, keeping this nation safe, having this love for this country. It's also, I think, incredibly important that when you're serving the administration, you have a good relationship with the president. It doesn't work so well. I know you've got a good relationship with the president, and you told me a story, and I want you to repeat that story of your son who was grievously injured and a visit that the President of the United States made to that hospital. I want you to tell the story because I think it's important that people understand why you are loyal to President Trump. I'd like them to hear a different side of President Trump as well. Yeah. But I think also that'll serve you well as his Secretary of Homeland Security. But just tell that story.
Ron, I'm going to try getting through it without crying then. It's not about President Trump, it's about my son. So my son was a really world-class athlete, and January 17th of 2020, which, mind you, was an election year, he had a really serious brain injury. Woke up 26 hours later, and he's a different kid. We almost lost him. For 26 hours, he had an extremely low pulse. There was a time they thought that they lost his pulse altogether. And when he woke up, he was just different. I mean, here he had a world-class athlete that wrestled all over the world since he was 12 years old, and he couldn't touch his nose. He couldn't walk without shuffling his feet. He had short-term memory loss. He couldn't control his muscles. Couldn't add 5 plus 3. He was in high school at that time. Had to learn how to read, walk, everything. And the president found out about it, and he gave me a call immediately. And one thing that the president joked about was, like, he said, let me get this straight. He doesn't know who you and Christy are, but he knew who I was because the only question you got right is who the president was. And he said, Trump, with this cocky grin on his face. But the president didn't understand the severity of it, but he heard it in my voice, and immediately he went to work. I told him we had to get to Bakersfield, California, to the Center for Neural Skills, which is one of the best neural rehabilitation places in the world. And the president offered to send his plane, his personal plane. This is the president of the United States. And I said, sir, we can't fly. We got to drive. We get there, and he called almost every day for 2 weeks checking on Jim. And then he says, I'm going to come see him. And now this is the middle of the election. This is Bakersfield, California. Really not an area he's got to go campaign. And he took the time to come up there and see Jim. And the center told us that the short-term memory loss something would trigger it. Some big event would eventually trigger where he'd start retaining stuff. Until then, he was still having issues. And the president arrived, and of course there was cameras and everybody around, and of course none of the media ever talked about it, which was funny because the president called him on stage and talked to him. And then we went to the back, and the president didn't talk to me. He didn't know I was in. I mean, he didn't care if I was in the room. Here's a guy that's been over, and his tie is about as long as my son because my son it stunted his growth, and so he's 5'3" the rest of his life. And his team came to him twice and said, sir, we got to go. We got to go. On the third time they came over to him, he looked at him and he says, hey, I guarantee you that plane won't leave without me. And for the next 15 minutes, he did nothing but love on my son. That one incident jogged his memory. And from then on, he started retaining things. And Jim's attitude went from this, we're going to get through it, to this, I'm going to get through it. And every week, if not most days, the president would call and ask how he could help. Ask how's his buddy doing? How's Jim doing? He didn't do it for publicity. He didn't do it for any show. He was running in one of the toughest elections he had been in, and the guy was still that concerned about my son. When we got released for a little bit, we had to go back. When we got released a little bit, the president said, come to Mar-a-Lago and see me. We go down there, and it's amazing. And when we're leaving, dang it, I hate getting emotional. See, if I talk about my kids, I get emotional. Other than that, you can't make me cry. But my kids do make me emotional.
That's actually a good thing.
Yeah. So anyways, he grabbed my son, and he said, do you know why I love your dad? Do you know why I love your dad? Chrissy tells the story better than I do. And he goes, no, sir. He goes, because he loves you. Because of you. Because of you. Man, he didn't do it for any other reason. I mean, here's the president of the United States, and he did it just because he cared. And so when you want to say why he's a friend, yeah, we were acquaintances before that. We've been friends ever since.
The American people need to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Senator Mullin. Thank you for being here today, and thank you to your family
for your service and theirs. I hope that you will be as emotional about the children who are presently detained at Dilley and other camps in the United States of America, where they have been subjected to conditions that would outrage and have angered many Americans. We're here because of a lawless and reckless agency that has broken into homes without judicial approval, shot United States citizens, detained them without any cause, and sometimes killed them. And I am looking for real substantive reform in that agency, as you and I have discussed when you came to talk to me. A break with the past, with former Secretary Noem and with the White House, Steve Miller and others who have used Kristi Noem in effect as a puppet to implement lawless policy. I welcome that you have stated you regret your statement after the killing of Alex Preddy. You said on Fox News, quote, "Unfortunately, an individual, a deranged individual that came to cause max damage with a loaded pistol with an extra mag that was completely loaded and shot and killed." And you regret that statement, do you not?
I've already said that, sir, yes.
And what about what you said about Renee Good after she was shot and killed? You appeared on CNN and you were asked whether you believed the shooting was justified, and you replied, quote, "Absolutely." Do you regret that statement as well?
Senator, it's very clear that an officer had to make a split decision in that case as a car was running towards him and did strike him. At that point, that car becomes a lethal weapon. And an officer that there was another officer obviously giving her verbal commands.
So are you saying, and I apologize for interrupting you, but
yes,
you're saying you do not regret that statement?
I'm saying that the investigation is going on, but what we've seen...
There is no investigation, Senator. In fact, that was my next question to you.
Senator,
don't you think there should be an investigation?
My understanding is that there is. I will find out once if I'm able to get confirmed. But those are two different incidences.
The Department of Homeland Security and the Trump administration has blocked state and local investigation of the killing of Renee Good. And I hope that you will permit that investigation to go forward.
Senator, state and local investigation doesn't investigate federal. FBI does that through DOJ. And I believe the FBI is looking at this case. And I do want to say something to you. You said about the terrible conditions that this administration is putting in kids. But what you left out is that they've actually recovered over 160,000 kids that were trafficked or lost during the Biden administration. What is inhumane is the 12 to 13,000 individuals coming across the border every single day, and we're not having tracked the kids. At one time, the number's up to 385,000, and that's sad.
Because you said that you were going to be, and I'm quoting you, blunt and direct and to the point. So I regret that you don't retract that statement about Renee Good. But I want to ask you about a statement that was made regarding the Preddy killing by Steve Miller in the White House. He said, quote, that Preddy was a domestic terrorist who, quote, tried to assassinate federal law enforcement. Don't you think it was irresponsible and reckless for Stephen Miller to post that claim on X without any evidence, just as you have retracted your statement?
Senator, I believe that question is better asked to Stephen Miller, not myself. I can't speak for him.
Well, Stephen Miller also said, again on Fox News, quote, under President Trump's leadership, we are looking to set a goal of a minimum of 3,000 arrests for ICE every day. If you're confirmed, are you going to be directing ICE to arrest 3,000 people a day?
Sir, once again, can't speak for Senator or for Stephen Miller, but I can say the President has tapped me to be the Secretary of Homeland, and I will lead that department, and I'll lead it.
So will you continue that arrest quota of 3,000 people a day?
No quota has been set for me, sir.
Well, in effect, it's a quota if the White House directs the DHS secretary.
The President of the United States sets the
day.
policies, and I'll be working with the President. If you have a question for Stephen Miller, please
Well, I
ask
really
him.
regret that you are going to stick to those same policies and practices and condone the statements of the White House that are so demeaning to someone who was a victim of lawlessness and recklessness by an ICE officer.
Senator, I didn't say that.
Well, let me ask you then
my mouth.
a different question. ICE has been breaking into people's homes without any judicial warrant. The sanctity of our homes is absolutely critical. I think you'd agree with that point. And it is the law that a judicial warrant is required to forcibly enter someone's home. Kristi Noem acknowledged in her testimony in response to my questions that at least 28 break-ins have occurred. My ranking member leadership on the subcommittee for permanent investigation has produced a report that shows probably many more such break-ins have occurred. The result of a memo last May from the acting director, Todd Lyons, and it's behind me now, that instructed ICE agents to break into homes. I understand that during your staff interview last week, you said that there would be no more such break-ins to people's homes without a judicial warrant. If confirmed, will you commit to me and the chair and ranking member of this committee and the American people that ICE will no longer instruct agents to break into people's homes without a judicial warrant?
Sir, you're using the word break into people's houses very loosely. However, I have made it very clear to the staff, and I think when you and I spoke, that judicial warrants will be used to go into houses, into place of businesses, unless we're pursuing someone that enters in that place. I have not mixed words with that, and I haven't changed my opinion about that.
A whistleblower testified to our hearing that, in fact, ICE agents have been instructed as part of their training to forcibly enter. I know you don't like the word break-in, but forcibly enter is breaking into somebody's home, bashing down the door, terrorizing children, instructed them to adopt this policy. Will you commit that no longer will ICE agents or CBP agents be instructed to forcibly enter people's homes without a judicial warrant?
Sir, I've already answered this question for you. I said we will not enter a home or a place of business without a judicial warrant unless we're pursuing the individual that runs into a place of business or a resident or a house.
Senator Langford.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Markwayne, right now, is FEMA currently funded?
No, sir.
Is CISA currently funded dealing with cybersecurity?
No, sir.
How about TSA?
No, sir.
Secret Service?
No, sir.
Coast Guard?
No, sir.
Customs and Border Protection?
No, sir.
The Weapons of Mass Destruction Office?
No, sir.
Customs professionals?
No, sir.
This is something we got to get resolved. We can complain all we want to about where things are, but we have an argument and a disagreement on policy areas, and 250,000 federal employees and their families are the ones that are suffering because of our argument. There's a way to solve this. We've talked about it a lot. We should just stay here until we're done. Just keep arguing it out until we've actually solved the problem. But instead, we broke last weekend. Everybody flew home right past the TSA agents that are not getting paid while we flew home. Why didn't we stay? To be able to try to get things resolved. That's my encouragement, has been my encouragement all along. We shouldn't walk away from a disagreement when there are families all over the country that are the ones suffering for it. Unfortunately, the state of Oklahoma is pretty familiar with natural disasters, as you know well. You and I have been in multiple different natural disaster scenes. There's a lot of work that's happened at the border so far. The border has moved from 12,000 people a day illegally crossing the border and being released into the country, unvetted, unchecked, to now a handful of people even attempt to cross our southern border, and those that are arrested and detained, as is the law. FEMA is still an undone project. and I'm not blaming that on Christy. There's a lot to get done on it, but you're going to walk in with a project going on with FEMA right now. Love to get your ideas and your thoughts. You're very familiar with this area and have great experience on it. What are your thoughts on how to be able to get FEMA into a better place so that people aren't waiting forever for a response?
FEMA was never designed to be the first responder. That's the states. FEMA was designed to be the assistance to the states when the disaster reaches certain levels, which we need to discuss those too, because I think some of the levels are unrealistic, especially Senator Hassan and I have talked about this, that sometimes in rural areas they're not able to meet those thresholds. But working with the state, allowing the state to have the emergency response, FEMA simply helping write checks and assuring that they have the capability and the manpower if need be. But for the FEMA to walk in like FBI walking on a crime scene and taking over, no one's going to care more about their backyard than the people that live there in that state. And I think there's a lot of good ideas. I've heard at meeting with so many of you all, there were so many great ideas on how to make FEMA work better. It's got a great mission, and I think people at FEMA want to do their job, but we can be more effective and be more direct and speed it up. Taking years to get reimbursed is not acceptable. Taking, honestly, months to get reimbursed is not acceptable. See, small municipalities, they can't afford it. They don't have that tax base to do it. And they're already going through a struggling time, which means they're probably losing tax revenue, especially if it hits their town. So we've got a lot of work there. I do believe that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That means we're going to look at each one of the 22 agencies that fall underneath DHS and say, how can we deliver the mission better for the American people?
That's great. That'd be a huge help to everybody. Talking about the length of time it takes to get a response, you've been a part of, as I have, on the nonprofit security grants that are out there. We have some locations that are higher risk than others. Synagogues and temples have been one of those very high-risk locations that are out there. Last week in Michigan, we had another situation where a absolute terrorist drove a vehicle packed with explosives into a Jewish daycare, intending to kill as many Jewish children as he possibly could. I mean, that was his intent, was to be able to do that. That location happened to be one of the locations where there's also been this nonprofit security grant to help harden that facility. We have multiple challenges here. One of them is when the decision is made, they make a request, go through the paperwork, get approval to be one of those locations that we say, hey, we need to harden this location. Once the approval is done, it may take months to over a year just for the dollars to actually come on it because there's more bureaucratic hoops to go through. So as you're dealing with things like contracts that are out there and the way decisions are made, or FEMA, that's one of the areas I would encourage you to take a look at. I know you're very passionate about. How do you fix the issue where approval's been done and everyone's saying, great, can we get to work? And the federal government says, no, you can't actually get to work. You got to wait some more before the actual work can actually begin to do that. How does that get fixed?
We got to streamline the process and cut out the redundancies. The amount of paperwork, the senator from Michigan and I had a long conversation about this, the amount of paperwork to just, once you're approved, to get the funding flowing, and then the paperwork that's followed up on it is way too encumbersome. And there's a better way to do this. Some of these policies I have to work with you guys on. Some of these grants were written with checks and balances, which we all got to be very cautious on how we spend the taxpayer dollars. Things that I can change, things that I can cut out on the redundancy part of it, I will work with. Things that, as the senator and I talked about, things that it may take you to make changes on, we'll bring it to your attention. I will work with you, and we'll see how we can make it better.
Be great. As you know, Oklahoma's been one of the leaders in counter-drone. This is a big issue for us as a country. Every high school football game, every college football game, every gathering of people for every festival and gathering across the country has now become a risk location for drones and drone mitigation. FBI can't be everywhere. We don't want them to be everywhere. We do have to figure out some process. So as you begin to think about this issue, it's a tough one to deal with, but it is a basic national security issue as well. It's going to land on your desk pretty quickly, especially with the Olympics coming, with FIFA coming, all those things that are happening. we got to be able to figure out how to do counter drone and to be able to not just identify there it is, but to also mitigate the risk. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, I'd love to speak about that. With funding, talking to some of our agency heads, with a lack of funding right now, we have people quitting because they got to go to work. Meeting these demands are even going to be tougher. So we just talk about FIFA, for instance, and then you talk about 2028, which is going to be the busiest year of DHS in history because we have the Olympics and we have the presidential election going on. It'll take 4 months once funding comes in to start replacing those that we've lost for training before we can get them out in the field. We don't have 4 months with FIFA. But that's and how do we expect these people to stay on the job and work? We're losing institutional knowledge. We're losing people we've already trained. And it's going to be difficult to deliver this mission. The way that I understand is we're behind in UAS and we're behind in FIFA right now on actually delivering the mission that we have to. We're also behind in reimbursing local communities that's also working with us. That's going to have to take a tremendous amount of focus and partnership. And we, like I said in my opening statement, failure is not an option, so we've got to deliver. But sometimes when you have to rush like this, especially trying to get people on the job because we just quit funding them for the third time in less than a year, and we expect these people to keep working, it puts the mission at risk, and we have a lot of work to do here.
Yeah, thanks for stepping up. Christy, thank you. It's a strain on the family and everything else right now. So thanks, y'all, for stepping into this role. Look forward to supporting your nomination.
Thank you.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Chairman. Senator Mullin, thanks for coming out here. I wanted to just start. Secretary Noem said in a cabinet meeting about almost exactly a year ago today that we should be eliminating FEMA. Can you commit to us here that you don't support that approach and you wouldn't attempt to eliminate FEMA?
As I said, I think it needs to be restructured, not eliminated.
I think there is going to be bipartisan support for reforms. I think we all understand that. We certainly saw a lot of problems when it came to Superstorm Sandy. I asked Secretary Noem to work with us, especially as they were going about their FEMA Review Council. I'll be honest with you, that never materialized. We did not see the kind of engagement here that we're ready to have. We have a bipartisan group of senators that want to come up with reforms. Is that something you can commit to working with us on?
Senator, I think all of us that's been either in the House or in the Senate always complain about the outreach of agencies. I will make a commitment to you that I'm going to have the best. It's going to take a couple months to stand it up, but we're going to have a ledge affairs shop that you're going to know who the person is. We're going to work with you, but most importantly, I think everybody on this dais has my personal cell phone. That cell phone isn't going to change. And if you call me, you're going to get a response. If you text me, we're going to get a response.
So when we have this FEMA Review Council report finally come out, is that something you'll come to us first and engage with us on rather than just implementing straight out from the executive branch on your own?
Senator, I'm pretty sure that you guys set the policies and the mission for FEMA. So for any serious changes, it may take actually policy changes. And I will be in your office talking to you about it.
I appreciate that, but we've seen a lot of significant problems happen. For instance, we saw about 2,400 staff cuts at FEMA. And again, we're not talking about the reforms, but we're talking about those that are trying to respond to these disasters every single day. So I wanted to ask if you're confirmed if you will stop these dangerous staff cuts that have reduced FEMA's disaster readiness.
Senator, I'm not trying to play politics, but what's been the biggest disaster is not funding them 3 times in a year. However, some of these agencies underneath the current administration, not some, all of them got very bloated with having too many.
You think there's still too many staff at FEMA?
Senator, I can't answer that. When I get there, we'll be adequately staffed to respond to our nation's disasters. But it's going to take some time to get there because, like I said, people are quitting today because they're not getting paid for the 3rd time in a year, and we can't allow that to take place.
I agree, and I hope that we can move forward on that. But one thing that has demonstrated a lack of priority by this administration is the fact that we never actually had a full nominee for FEMA. So I just wanted to ask, do you agree that we need an actual nominee to be a full FEMA administrator that has real experience in emergency management?
Absolutely. We're already looking at some in the case that we do get confirmed, which I'm hopeful we do. we are making that a priority in each one of our agencies. But the confirmation also has to go through you, and we know.
I get it, but at least we can get a nominee before us, and I think that's something I hope to take away. That is a commitment you'll make.
Honestly, by the experience that I've had, which has been an interesting experience, it's a lot to ask someone, and they got to be fully committed. If they go through this process, it's tough. So I would ask you, if I do this, give them a fair shake. For me, a lot of you guys aren't giving me a fair shake to even earn your support. So if I bring somebody else into you, maybe you'll give them a fair shake and you'll actually work with them, because I'm going to find somebody that is capable of doing the job, that's smarter at me at doing the job, that has experience doing the job. But when they come to your office and ask for your support, don't tell them it's politics. Don't say I can't. Don't say that, hey, I supported the previous one, but I got burned on that one, so I can't support you. We'll trust, but just give them a fair opportunity, and you might actually like the person we choose.
And look, it's not just about the person; it's about the policies writ large. And then look, what we saw before. For instance, Secretary Noem had this policy that required her approval for anything that was going out the door, grants, funding, when over $100,000. And I'll be honest with you, it was disastrous. It held up so much of the funding to FEMA and other parts of DHS. Senator Peters and I did a review of this. Over 1,000 FEMA contracts, grants, and disaster assistance awards were delayed. So I wanted to ask you if you can commit to revoking this $100,000 policy by Secretary Noem.
Sir, we talked in your office about that, and absolutely. That's called micromanaging, and I don't know if Secretary put that in or someone else did. I'm not a micromanager. We put people in. We empower them to make decisions. What is required to come to my level will make decisions. We will have a very clear line of communication with every one of our agency's heads on their authority that is given to you, that you gave to them within their parameters, and we'll discuss. But we're also going to be very responsible for the taxpayer dollars. But it's unrealistic to some degree.
It's just adding so much red tape, though. I mean, they really delayed, especially when it came to disaster response and the Texas floods. I want to switch gears here. This is something you remember we talked about, but we have this effort right now. ICE has purchased a warehouse in Roxbury, New Jersey. It's a facility the size of 8 football fields to house over 1,500 detainees. Never once did an ICE official go and talk to the local mayor, talk to the local law enforcement, assess the situation alongside the locals. So I just wanted to ask you, is that fair that DHS is imposing these types of large-scale detention facilities without local engagement and input?
Sir, being from small rural Oklahoma, it's a big impact, and the community should be visited with, especially when you start taking a warehouse off. It takes it off the tax roll, which can make a huge impact, and you got to deal with impact aid if they're eligible for it. And then you got to talk about infrastructure. One thing I do know is construction. When you start talking about infrastructure on these places, a warehouse sprinkler system is much smaller than when you are housing individuals there. And if you say, I think you said the town is 60,000 people. And I believe you said this was
smaller than that.
Is it smaller than that? So
about 22,000 people,
okay, and
of
the
which the detainees
center,
and the staff there would constitute about 10% of the population of that town.
Yeah, and realistically, it's not. Most municipalities don't have the capacity in their infrastructure for waste and water. So it's important that we're talking to the communities, and if we're having additional needs, we can work with the cities, we can work with the municipalities, but we should always communicate with them.
I agree with that. And this town has only 42 police officers, a volunteer fire department. Does that sound like the kind of town that has the resources to take on a warehouse of this magnitude?
Sir, I don't know the circumstances behind this other than what you and I talked about. I committed to you when I visited with you in your office. We'll talk. I even said, you and I get on the phone with the mayor. If I'm confirmed, I'll make a trip out there and see it for myself, because it's a big concern of yours, and we want to address those concerns. And if it's not practical, but I also said it's got to be, there may be a specific reason why it's there. If I can't explain that to you, then that's a different story. But if there's a specific reason I can explain it to you to make it make sense, let's talk about it. But if not, then maybe we can be better partners.
I'm glad that you commit to talking about it. There are some documents I asked ICE to send us about their evaluations of the warehouse. We have still yet to get it. Will you commit that that is something that we can get once?
If the documents are available, yes, but I've also offered something much better. I'll go with you personally and look at it.
That's something that the local community will appreciate, and I hope that you will reassess this with
As
us.
I said in my opening statements, we want to protect the homeland, but we also want peace of mind and bring back confidence to the Department of Homeland Security. And all this means that we got to work on that, and I will work on that.